Hello everyone, today I'm going to explain how I made my latest custom Super Mario Bros. Wonder badge challenge level, which makes use of the Spring Feed badge. Before starting work on my recent Invisibility badge challenge level, I basically did a big brainstorming session where I tried to think of interesting combinations for many of the game's badges. And one idea I came up with then was combining the Spring Feed badge with countdown platforms, which get triggered by being jumped on, making it a very interactive combo. I also realized one of the few ways of making the player not bounce when wearing this badge is by sliding, so in order to take advantage of this, I decided to use these big pendulum platforms, which also led to the decision to use the Fungi Mines Temple theme. So now let's talk about the actual level design process. The very start of the level takes place on a pendulum platform that doesn't move by default, but which can be activated to allow the player to progress. This meant the badge challenge sign stuff that always appears at the start of these levels had to be made to move along with the platform, which I figured would be possible using the vanilla game's actors, but it turns out those aren't bindable. So a few minutes into starting work on this level, I had to pause what I was doing to quickly make bindable duplicates of these objects just to make this whole setup work. Something you may notice about this level compared to my previous badge challenges, and the ones in the original game, is that, well, how do I say this? It feels more like a normal level that happens to use a badge, as opposed to a level that is specifically designed to only work with this one badge. The original game Spring Feed badge challenges are mostly really uninteresting in my opinion, because honestly the badge itself isn't super unique. It doesn't allow the player to do anything super interesting that they wouldn't normally be able to do without a badge either. So to compensate for this, I designed this level more like any other normal level, with how it sets up more interesting mechanical ideas and combinations and whatnot, as opposed to purely focusing on the badge's abilities. And to be clear, I did still very much design everything in the level around the badge's specific functionality, I just don't think that's always super obvious when actually playing it. For example, the final setup before the first checkpoint involves a countdown platform that slowly moves along a rail as spiked blocks sway up and down above, which normally wouldn't be a challenge whatsoever since the player could just stand and wait around on the platform, but since the badge makes the player repeatedly jump, this of course normally causes the platform to count down really quickly. The only way to avoid this is to do higher jumps, but that's made tricky by those spiky blocks up above. So this is a section that only works because of the Spring Feed movement. Something unique about the badge challenges in the original game is that they make very frequent use of those big colorful box platforms, not only as static terrain, but also as moving elements. It would have been possible to integrate those into the big swaying platform setups throughout this level, and I considered doing so, but ended up deciding to stick to using the appropriate block types for those, so instead the colorful boxes are the main type of static terrain I use throughout the level, and as a result the level barely uses any normal tiled terrain. The second third of the level basically completely revolves around a type of setup where the player is forced to slide on pendulum platforms to avoid bouncing into poisoned water spheres. This is another design element that might seem completely unrelated to the Spring Feed badge movement, but once again, it only really works because of it, since normally the player would just be able to walk under the poisoned water spheres without needing to slide, but the Spring Feed's bouncy movement means the player has to slide, which is what makes the section quite challenging. My original plan for the level's second purple 10 coin was that the player would be able to hit a Wonder Bud that deletes one of the poison water spheres and replaces it with the 10 coin. However, no matter what I tried, I couldn't get this to work, since for some reason the poison water sphere wasn't being deleted even when I set it up to be. As it turns out, this is because poison water spheres are area objects, which apparently can't be affected by links like these whatsoever. The original game does something similar to what I had in mind with a lava sphere and a wonder seed in the final Fungi Mines level, but that works because that lava sphere is an object actor, not an area. I tried making a poison water sphere object actor by duplicating and modifying several other objects, but couldn't get that to work, and I even considered considered changing the entire level's theming to make it use lava, so I could use the lava sphere object, but in the end I decided that wasn't worth the bother just for some random purple 10 coin idea, so I instead changed the setup. The first badge challenge I ever made, which used the safety bounce badge, ended in a vertical section with rising lava. And this level also ends in a vertical section, but although I considered using rising or lowering poison water, I decided that would be too similar. As I was working on earlier parts of this level, I noticed how, logically, objects attached to the swaying pendulum platforms moved further and quicker the further away from the center of rotation they're placed. So I decided to take advantage of this in the level's third section by making the entire thing revolve around climbing platforms that are all attached to a pendulum platform that's down below, meaning the objects sway further and faster the higher you go. And this is especially challenging because there are poison waterfalls on either side of the screen which the swaying platforms dip into. I did at one point forget to unpause the recording when working on this section though, so that's why the time-lapse just kinda skipped a part. For the level's flagpole setup, I messed around with another sliding pendulum platform contraption like earlier in the level, but I quickly realized that there was no way to smoothly transition from that into the player being able to actually jump to reach the top of the flagpole. So I instead came up with a far simpler setup where the player just bounces on a few countdown platforms that sway back and forth. These platforms all count down from 1, meaning they drop almost immediately after they're touched, which shouldn't normally be super difficult to deal with, but could be really tricky in multiplayer if the player's movement isn't synchronized. However, I don't personally think multiplayer friendliness is something that should generally get in the way of making fun single-player focused design decisions, and this level is really quite difficult either way. When certain platforms dip in and out of liquids in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, this sometimes happens with an appropriate splash effect. And as it turns out, this isn't something that happens automatically in most cases, but actually requires special objects to be placed along the edges of the platforms where the splashes are generated. Honestly, as far as I can tell, these don't really do that much in most cases, both in the original game and in this level, but sometimes the effect is quite noticeable, and I suppose it's a cool detail. I also of course spent some time decorating the level, though since it mostly consists of moving platforms, there weren't really many places where I could actually place decorative elements. The original game never places generic decorative elements like piles of rubble or whatever on moving platforms, so I decided to stick to that rule as well. So the level's decorations mostly come down to some background wall elements that help to break up the repetitive platforms. Anyways, that's all there is to show as far as the level creation is concerned, so now let's play through it in-game. Okay, and here we are. So as you can see, and also as I talked about during the time-lapse, the badge sign stuff at the start here is on one of the big swaying pendulum platforms, which also means that that stuff can move, which it's a bit strange maybe, but I feel like it's strange in a way that really fits with how Wander tends to sort of like subvert typical level tropes like that, and so I think that's kind of cool. The first purple 10 coin here is very simple. I like the way the talking flower comments on it. But yeah, I feel like it's also fine because that is very typical for badge challenges to have super simple purple 10 coins. I mean, I feel like some of the purple 10 coins in the original game's badge challenges are easier to get than not to get, basically. So I think that's fine. Hitting this Wander bud makes this platform go back and forth, which allows you to go up here, because even though the bouncy badge, what's it called? The spring feet badge does allow you to jump quite high, it doesn't actually allow you to go all the way up onto that colorful box there. And yeah, here's one of those sections where you have to slide, and it's kind of fun to do that with the timing of the platform moving back and forth. I quite like a little mechanical setup there. Here's what originally was going to be a section where this poison water sphere was going to be replaced by the 10 coin, but instead I had it revolve around the poison water sphere because I couldn't set that up in the way I wanted it to be set up, but that's fine. And yeah, that little tricky jump there now led us into the final, well, not the final section, but like the final main section, the final third of the level, which involves, yeah, this one big swaying platform setup. Here we have another one of these Wonder Bud, like repeating Wonder Bud block things, which is really satisfying to hit with the Spring Feet badge. And yeah, this can be quite tricky because, as you can see, things are moving back and forth more and more quickly as we move up here. Sometimes this block still allows you to get a few more coins. Yeah, there we go. But sometimes it can actually just like block you from getting anything more. But yeah, this final section here is just kind of like really difficult, and it's the main reason I gave the level a 4-star difficulty rating, because it's currently, yeah, just like really tricky, especially with this purple 10 coin here. And also with just like the main route, which, oh, no, wait, no, I actually didn't press up. Can I save this maybe? I guess I'm gonna have to wait a cycle. Yeah, I mean, just like this, navigating this section with the timing of all the different platforms and whatnot is just a bit tricky and kind of insane sometimes. But for the most part, I think it's all right. And yeah, I guess that's gonna do it for this level and also for this video, guys. So if you enjoyed, maybe consider leaving a like or subscribing to the channel. And I also have a public Discord server linked in the description, and YouTube channel memberships and all that stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, see you later, and bye bye!